Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pop Go the Writers. This is a special episode, another one of our classic television episodes, and we have Irene Adler back with us. Writers, this is
Cheers.
a special episode, another one of our classic television episodes.
I hear. Let's see. Better?
Yes.
All right.
Heard myself there for a second, and I don't like my own voice.
Their own voice. Our own voices are terrifying. I'm going to set my.
Yeah. Now, tonight we are going to talk about Mannix Season 2. We did the previous season earlier. And this is a show that had a ton of huge changes between between Seasons 1 and Season 2. The first season was established that he worked for a company called Intertech, where he was a detective. He worked for a guy named
Lou?
Lou, what's the last name?
Wasserman.
Yeah. So
that's who it's based on. Lou Wasserman is who it's based on, yeah.
Yeah. So he worked for Lou Wickersham.
Yes.
And they had a giant computer set up, and they were constantly trying to get him to use a computer, and he was much more the classic detective.
It was a really high concept show for the time.
It was
basically like, let's put Star Trek in the current atmosphere and use all the same computers.
It's a sci-fi detective series, you know?
Yeah, it's a sci-fi detective series, that first season. And not.
Yeah, it turned out no, they didn't do that season 2. And it was the most, what's a good way to put it, backhanded change I've ever seen.
It is, yeah.
I mean, basically, they don't even mention his old boss or the company until the third episode of season 2, and then it's done in such a derogatory way. One of the new cast members goes there to get information and gets in trouble for going there.
Yeah,
and that's it. That's the last time we hear of them, at least in all of season 2. I don't know. You're farther ahead in this as I am. Do we ever return to Intertech after that?
We don't get back to Intertech. Now we do get to see Joseph Campanella again, but he is a different character. He is not playing Lou Grisham. He is playing a completely different character, kind of a jerk too, which is fun. It's fun to watch because, so going back to the first season, I always feel really bad for Lou because I feel like Lou's literally just like, I'm trying to run this stupid business. Why are you all making my job so hard? And like, he does a lot of sighing. And whenever I see that, I just want to hug him. I'm like, I'm sorry, your employees are rude to you and hard. And don't get me wrong, I love me some Mannix, but they make life real difficult for Lou.
Yes, yeah. And there was a very interesting relationship, a dynamic between the two. A few times Mannix even referred to him as daddy.
Yeah, there's a lot of daddy in there, actually. So I'm doing a rewatch now. It can be fresh for when we talk these. So I started and I've been going back through, and like a few things hit me, and one of them is so many people call him daddy. Like it comes up a lot, and it's one of those odd things where I just go, how did I miss that the first time? But going back to what you said about being such a different change, like just abrupt and sort of different. So that comes from Lucille Ball. This is all Lucille Ball's doing. And Mannix is going to be canceled after the first season. It had okay numbers, but it was very expensive. As you can tell from all the computer stuff that they had in the background.
Oh, yeah.
And also, too, you'll look and there'll be scenes where he'll walk through the office and you'll see 50 cast members. Like there'll be 50 people at desks. And just that, you had to pay all the extras, for that day. So yeah. It was costly. And when they were going to cancel it, Lucille Ball said, nobody's watching this show for the computers. they're watching it for the eye candy. And she's like, she literally said something along the lines of, all my girlfriends think he's hot and none of them are watching for the computers. So just put him on the show without the computers and it'll be fine, which is both hilarious and like, she's not wrong.
Right. And this show originally was going to be called Intertech.
Yes, Intertech was the first name, and they sort of luckily changed the name to Mannix, and that would have been super awkward if they had called it Intertech. I don't know, it wouldn't have gotten its second season.
Yep, and we're glad it did. As season 2 rolled in, the first thing we get is the casting of Gail Fisher as Peggy, which is pretty groundbreaking in a lot of ways.
It
being
really is.
Basically an African-American woman as a regular cast member, and basically the number 2 of a show. It was Mannix, Peggy. She was on in the opening credits. She was, in any publicity photos. It became the Mannix and Peggy show.
Yeah, it really did. And Gail Fisher is amazing. So she's basically just gonna be the first at everything. Like I guess that's just who she is. So she was the first African American cheerleader at her school. She was a beauty pageant winner. She won a bunch of beauty pageants. She was not just the first African American woman, but she was the first African American person on a national commercial. And all that was before Mannix. She was just hit the ground running. I mean, it's unsurprising. One, she's gorgeous.
Yes.
She has a stunning voice. She's a really good actress. And she's funny too. She's really funny as Peggy. So yeah, but putting her on the lead character, his secretary, was kind of a big deal. It wasn't, here's our hot Swedish secretary that is going to be a relationship for him.
Yeah.
Which very quickly, I think that could have happened. It could have been, it's Joe and Joe's girlfriend that does the thing. And because she's African American and because the studio literally was like, you can't do that because that's going to be his love interest and it's not going to fly in the South. We can't do that. And they said, it's her or we're all going to go. Like that's who we want.
Yeah.
And, so, I think it works great. I think a couple of things. I'm just going to yammer for a minute, so just bear with me. One of the things I think casting Peggy does that's really fantastic is because from the beginning you're not allowed to have that romance, that office romance. I think it actually makes the characters a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
Because they have to play subtext. And playing that subtext really gives them room to grow and become more interesting characters other than it's Joe's secretary who's a hot girl who answers his phone and they have like a little thing. They get to be interesting characters.
Mm-hmm. Plus she gets to have relationships that feed into the narratives, both with at one point Yaphet Kotto comes in, and I don't remember the name of the other gentleman who was the one that helped with the heist.
Yes, the one that helped with the heist. I just finished that. I'm blanking on the actor's name, unfortunately, but it's a great episode.
Yes.
And actually, so in this episode, it's far into season 2. What is it, like the second to the last episode or the third to the last episode of season 2? It's pretty far in there. Peggy is sweet on someone who ends up being involved in a narcotic robbery, morphine robbery.
Yeah.
And to me, I love that episode because you have her having someone that she has feelings for and is interested, and they get to have a talk like about race relations. At one point, he's kind of like, I'm black. He literally says to her, I'm a black guy and it's different. And that's not something I think you'd seen on television at that time. And also, there's a great scene in that's him, Peggy, and Peggy's son Toby. And so you have this full like African American family structure that you're watching. There's no white people for like 15 minutes on it. And I mean, it's nothing today, but that was a big deal back then. It wasn't sort of something you saw as much.
Yeah.
And portrayed positively, even though his character helps out with this robbery. He's a nice man. He is kind to her son. They have a lot in common. It's, I like that it's not presented as one dimensional. They're very fleshed out characters.
Yeah. And Peggy actually helps with helps figure out the crime in that episode. Recognizes the freshly painted truck in the airport parking lot. That really kind of sets that off. I think we might have a convert. Jason Krager is I'm gonna have to watch this Mannix.
Good. It's really great. You'll love it. It's
a good way to start is they used to be all on YouTube, but I think the owners have gone out and kind of scrubbed YouTube of it currently. But if you have Me TV, they air it every night at 2 a.m. And Jason, I know you're an artist, so you are up at 2 a.m. Come on, let's be serious. You're up at 2 a.m.
We know.
So you can catch. I think they're currently showing the final season of Mannix right now, though.
They are, which will actually weird you out because that's kind of how I saw it. I saw like the last 3 episodes, I think, and then it kicked over to season 1. And wait, what? I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah,
and it took me a minute. So it's fine. Like if you want to just start at season 2, if you want, it's actually pretty reasonable set of discs for. It's something like 200 episodes or 250 episodes. It's like a crazy amount.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually picked up the first 4 seasons for like $30.
There you go. See? It's like nothing. Yeah.
Well, they start the season off in a very strange way in that, again, they don't address the changes until the 3rd episode, and it's barely.
Yeah.
What you get is an episode that starts off at an airport with a deaf woman reading the lips of somebody planning a kidnapping.
Yeah.
And first thing you got to know is that the woman who's playing the deaf woman is a deaf actress. And they actually kind of celebrate what she does. They give her a chance to do a performance in the episode. And that's one of the things I really love about this show is there's a lot of social issues they tackle. And while it's still from a 70s point of view, or late 60s, 70s point of view, they address the Hispanic culture. They address the African-American culture. There's a lot of issues that they deal with that even PTSD in one episode.
Yeah.
With a gentleman returning back, and then there's an Asian, I don't want to say Asian American, she's actually Asian.
Asian.
Yeah, Asian. And so they really play up a lot of that along with adding Peggy. But we have like an entire scene of this woman reading the lips of this plan, going to the police, and then Mannix happens on her. And next thing you know, we're at Mannix's office, which it looks like it's half an office, half a house.
Yeah.
I think it's the Paseo.
Paseo Verde, yeah.
Paseo Verde. And the secretary, Peggy's there, and we just roll with it.
Yeah, there's no, here's my new secretary, here's my new digs. It's like, I'm here, we're going to watch what's going on now. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't even show you him quitting Intertech.
No.
Or setting up the new office, making the decision. We're in this new reality.
And also, like, I'll take an aside because I love all the social issues and all that stuff. So the first scene that Peggy's in, she yells at him, which is great too. That's another thing I love. It's she's not particularly deferential to
No.
him, which is great. And again, like, not something you see very often. And I can't remember exactly what he's doing, but he's questioning this woman who is
And he's pushing her too much.
pushing her too much. And Peggy's like, knock it off. She's
Yeah.
like overwhelmed. And it's kind of great that doesn't have any consequences for her. It's not him then being pissy about it. He's not doing, he was just like, oh, okay. So in the first scene, we know she's not afraid to stand up to him, and that he at least values her opinion enough that he's going to listen.
Yeah.
When like, hey, dude, calm down.
Yeah. And her backstory is really interesting. She is a widow of a cop with a 7-year-old.
In the second season, he's 6.
Okay, 6-year-old son. And she's, surviving on, and, and she's constantly there. And there's references to the babysitter and, oh, no, I have to go home. So it wasn't just, oh, the secretary that's always there. She came in with a history, issues. I mean, just everything that she was a 3-dimensional character walking in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. She's formed. It's not a pretty foil to be there and just to be eye candy. It's character. Yeah. And as you go through the seasons, we explore things with her more and more. And that's a really great thing, is it doesn't peter out. We get to see sort of more of her and her son, what that relationship's like, more of her, dating people. And
who are usually in trouble with the cops and need Mannix.
Usually in trouble with the cops and need Mannix. That is a theme. Actually, though, there is one coming up that's great. And it's not that he needs help from Mannix. It's that Mannix sort of says, well, you shouldn't go off with that guy to a different country. It'd be bad. And it's an interesting moment because it's an admission of how important that character is to him. And maybe actually one of the few moments I would think that he's actually being a bit selfish. And eventually comes around to sort of seeing that he's being a bit selfish, and maybe, if he's not going to run off with the secretary, he should not try to hold that secretary back. But that's for another season, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Now, the other thing they do in the new season, which is interesting, is they up the police presence. We get a couple of recurring cops.
Yeah.
And 2 of them are very interesting actors. One is Larry Linville, who of course went on to play Frank Burns in MASH, and he's a rather likable detective, and they get along well, and it's the same thing. Mike Reed is another one, the dad from Brady Bunch.
Yeah. I don't know if it comes out unless you're listening for it, because I know I missed it the first time. But Larry Linville is playing Peggy's for her dead
former partner. Yeah.
Which is interesting because, again, that's another interesting thing to see. Like, what is there? And they don't really explore that a ton, but I like that. I think they thought about it.
Yeah.
To have that there.
Yeah. And then there's also, I don't know the actor's name, but Art Meacham, who is an older cop who has some issues all season. And then I know in the future he gets an episode where he gets brainwashed. Yes. Like, okay.
Yeah.
But he's another one that, I mean, there is the equivalent of a bottle episode is as close as I can think of. And it involves him being kidnapped. They're both, I guess he and Mannix were in the service together. And this other guy who was in their unit, everybody else is dead. They got captured at one point. Everybody else is dead. And he's holding.
Perhaps.
Yeah. And the whole thing takes place in this deserted hotel.
Yeah.
And there's cops surrounding him, but that's basically a bottle episode. They don't shoot on. I mean, it takes place from Mannix shows up.
He like tears up in his car in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then they keep going until he finds Art Malcolm. Yeah, they walk out together, and you're right, it's all one set.
Yep.
I mean, one location. It's obviously there's multiple sets in it, but
yeah. But I mean, basically that's a bottle episode, and you got you got a couple extras and the cop yelling up from the street. Otherwise, it's the bad guy, it's Mannix, and it's Meacham, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I found that really fascinating of an episode.
Yeah, it is a good episode, and I can't remember the name of the actor playing the baddie in that, but he was in Star Trek. He was a baddie in Star Trek. If you remember, he's the one that sends the green Orion space girl to choke to death in the outer.
Yeah, his name is Steve Inhot.
Steve Inhot, there you go.
And Art Malcolm was Ward Wood.
Ward Wood, yeah. So Ward Wood actually ends up having the most appearances of one of the secondary characters. That's a cop. I love Art. I think Art's great. I don't think they actually ever bring up that Art is like his Korean War buddy ever again. I think that kind of disappears. And also we did see that actor once as a another character. He does start as he's a police or FBI or something, I can't remember, but he bursts on the scene and they give him some other name that I don't remember. But he and Peggy end up having an interesting relationship too, and they have some nice scenes together, which is a fun thing. Again, that really cool thing of she's not just there to be Mannix's secretary.
Right.
Character, and she's interesting. So I don't know if this is true. I have more research to do. This could be apocryphal, but from everything I can find, when the casting memo went out to cast Peggy, it did not mention any type or race or age, which is that I can't find confirmation on that, but I have heard that. And so that's super interesting to me too, is that did they just want to find someone interesting that they thought was great, and that's, she was literally the best person for that job, or were they hoping to find something that wasn't just a solid wall of white characters? So I am doing more research. I'll let you know when I find that out.
Well, this makes sense because it is a Desilu production.
Yeah.
Before it got sold off to, but also the idea of adding racially diverse characters was Star Trek too. So having that character, it's almost a step up from Uhura.
Yeah, it is. I love Nichelle Nichols, and I think she's an amazing actress, and did great work. But her character isn't a lead. Her character is a secondary character.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to me too, because they make such a big deal of, this scene with her and Kirk is this first interracial kiss. And first of all, that's not 100% certain. There was one before in England that aired. I don't think it aired here. I do believe that was the first one that aired in the US. It's also not consensual though. So it's not that Kirk's the one that's
right.
asked. It's that they're literally shoved in the situation by the game masters, and they have to make out for their enjoyment. Which, if you look on Mannix, I don't know if it's true, but Peggy and Mannix get to the point where they're they hug, they hold each other, they're very affectionate, and that's actually, I think, kind of cooler. It's more this is just normal.
Yeah.
Not look at our big deal that we're doing here. Look how edgy. It's no, I just care about that character.
Plus, with Star Trek, how odd is it? I know it's an interracial kiss, but in a show that Kirk hooks up with orange and green people.
Yeah, exactly.
Why
is that one that takes under duress? Why, isn't there just, some hot some hot African American chick that he wants to make out with.
Yep. I mean, they could have just as easily painted up an African American woman in green instead of Yvonne Craig.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
No.
And so, it's part of it is looking back and I will always acknowledge what a progressive show that is. And Star Trek is one of my very first loves, and I have a deep and abiding nerdery for it. But Mannix got there first.
Yep. Oh yeah. So another character that pops up, and I don't know where the hell he comes from and why he's there.
It's
Is Albie. Yeah.
No one knows.
What the hell is Albie for?
So that's one of the few things I'm not a fan of. And it's a little bit more, I don't know, Mayberry, like Andy Griffith Show kind of character. It's not as deep as some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's like you're an old white dude that's kind of in the way and whining to everybody. Which, I mean, I get it, because yeah. But yeah, I'm not a huge Albie fan.
Does he stick around much after season 2?
No, I mean, like, you'll see him, but he's not he's not as main of a character as Art Malcolm or Adam Tobias, that sort of thing.
Yeah, which one? Tobias is the Mike Reed character, right?
Correct. Yeah, and he got a promotion, I think, in season 2, right? I think when we first see him, he's a sergeant, then he moves to lieutenant, or I don't remember. He gets a bump, and he makes
Good
more.
Yeah, they're good cops. They should.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing with Albie is, I have a feeling, in a lot of ways, they might have been trying to. I don't know. Normally, you start writing ahead, so you get some scripts done, and they might have been using some scripts that was made off of the season 1 format.
That's totally.
And there was oftentimes Wickersham would give him another person from Intertech.
Work with, here, you're working with Pender today.
Yeah. Or this guy is going to help you out. And they grab, Albie becomes the new Intertech guy, or the new helpful guy.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of, because the character just pops up out of the blue, and he's constantly whining about wanting his name on the door or be a partner. And it's like,
yeah, it is he grates a little for me.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to go back and find out. So they did not shoot in order. So like the first episode might have been the 5th one that they shot, and vice versa. And I don't know what the actual shooting order versus I should look that up. I have a billion of the original shooting scripts here, and I'm sure they're all dated, so I'm sure I can figure that out if I sit my butt down and actually pay to it. But I like that when Intertech went away, that they did bring in more cops that he sees regularly. And I like that. It's one of the things that the show does really well, and I think is kind of unique in a lot of ways from most other shows sort of that time, is that he doesn't need the people around him to be morons to make him look good.
Yeah.
So like all the cops, good cops. Like they're occasionally, in the series, there's a quote unquote bad cop that is the villain, but the people that are in the police department, it's not every week them going, Mannix, you're in trouble. And that whole silly like rivalry thing that was like a real big thing they do back then.
Oh yeah.
For the most part, they get along pretty well.
Yeah. I wasn't sure that was going to be the case when we first meet Larry Linville's character, who I can't remember his name in the show, because the episode Mannix is taking a helicopter to Santa Barbara, and he sees what he thinks is a choking happening on the balcony or on the rooftop. And when he goes, that gets the cops to, and it's like there's no evidence, everybody's fine. And he keeps butting heads.
Got choked is there and goes like, I'm cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got some good twists to it. I actually really like the twists in that episode. But I think that's one of the things I really like about the show is it's never the obvious answer.
No, it's not.
You know, and I watch a lot of other 70s detective series, and they're not as clever.
No, you're like, it's the guy with the thick eyebrows.
Yeah.
Obviously, that guy. It's that guy that looks evil in the corner.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah.
Unlike 80s and 90s detective series where it's obviously the famous guest star.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's the dad from Family Ties.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's the killer.
Clearly, he's the one that did it.
Yeah.
No, you're right. And also, so let's see. In this season, we get the first. There's a whole bunch of actors that do work in the season that then pop up as different characters. That's a recurring thing you'll see now is so many characters that play 5 different roles.
Oh, yeah. I was watching an episode with an actor, and I can't think of his name, but and then later that night, I was awake at 2 a.m., had on MeTV, and caught one of the season 8 episodes, and they're down in a foreign country, and they're trying to smuggle out of the country, and it's the same actor as the doctor. It's like...
Yeah, that's some fun stuff.
Yeah. Anthony Zerbo, I think it is, who I'm thinking of. Zerbo.
Anthony Zerb did at least 3 episodes. I can't remember if it's more. One of my favorite episodes in season 2 is the one where Anthony Zerb plays like the Southern cop, the Southern sheriff.
Yeah, that was the episode. And then later on, he's the doctor.
Yeah. And I love the fact he plays a priest at one point too. I love the fact that as soon as you see Anthony Zerb, you're like, well, that's the villain. Because it's Anthony Zerb and he's a monster and everything he plays.
No, and he turns out to be great.
And I love the fact that Mannix is like, well, you're a small southern city's detective, so clearly you're the devil. And the entire episode is him being like, why are you being such a judgmental asshole? I'm a nice man. And it's funny because you just keep waiting for that shoe to drop where you're like, Anthony Zerb's super definitely the devil. And like at the very end, he's like, what? I have like African-American detectives in my department. I am very progressive. And I believe that this progressive thing that we're doing is correct. I don't understand why you're so rude to me.
Oh, yeah. And he outsmarts Mannix in a way.
Yes. Yeah.
Basically, he says, well, I wasn't getting anywhere, so I just put you on the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the Yaphet Kotto episode.
It was, yeah. Who was amazing in that episode. And also, there was some really fun jazz in it, too. So it was also fun.
It was. And I do notice, though, the one thing I missed from season 1 was the occasional big band that would show up.
Yeah.
You know?
They get some more, like, larger musicians, but I don't think that there's ever, like, a famous music guest star again after season 1. I feel like they were all in season 1.
Yeah, Neil Diamond was like...
Yeah, and I love Mannix's reaction to him, which is just like these crazy kids and their weirdo music.
Yeah,
it was such a great moment.
Yeah,
sort of, you know. And
I gotta say, when I watched some of the season 8 episodes, and I know the show was canceled because of behind the scenes stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean there was a good chance they would have kept going otherwise.
Yeah,
but I think part of the catalog was sold to a different network.
Correct. Yeah. And they did rerun it tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. But looking at Mike Connors in season 8 compared to the early, it's like
seems like it was a hard job.
Yes.
That it's like I can see where that took it out of you.
Yeah, those were a long 8 years.
Those were a long 8 years. Well, and also too, like obviously now we know, but back then when it was, you didn't have the internet, and you had just press stuff, there was a whole big thing where they were trying to sell him much younger than he was.
Oh yeah, in one of the episodes they referred to him as being mid-30s, and he was 41 at the time.
Yeah, exactly. And they were doing that though, like off the show as well. And there's a hilarious article that someone sort of brought up, and they said, "So how old are you?" And he's like, "I'm 35, I guess." Like, sort of a thing. And they sort of pushed back, and he was like, well, I was in World War II for 4 years, so I mean, you can do your own math. And it's, they have him as a Korean War veteran, but Mike Connors was in World War II for a big chunk of time. And so it's one of those things that it's of its time, where they used to do that, but is, toward the end of it, it's very ridiculous.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily understand it, because
other
shows of that era, it didn't matter. I mean, Barnaby Jones, Buddy Epson was ancient, or Cannon. Oh God, they air Cannon right after. And the opening for Mannix is really well done. The opening for Cannon is horrible.
It's literally, it sounds like somebody is lagging, and it's like there's weird music, like Cannon, like sort of awkwardly screamed at you.
But what they did was they took close-ups of William Conrad's body, but not flattering close-ups.
No.
Like the roll on the back of his neck, his belt buckle, his chin. And they do these extreme close-ups, and they run them across, diagonal across the screen. And then it's like, Cannon.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with Cannon. I'm just saying that I've seen several episodes, and none of them pulled me in the same way that Mannix did.
Yeah.
It might be, that might be in the beginning. I might just have been shallow and been like, that dude's pretty good looking in the ways that I like dudes to be good looking. I think I might watch this show. But, I stayed for the Peggy, and I stayed for the Art Malcolm, and I stayed for the
well, I will say about William Conrad is at some point he realized he was no longer the lead detective type, and needed to do more of a Nero Wolfe style.
Sure.
And transferred to Jake and the Fat Man with Joe Perry.
Yeah.
I think his name is.
Yeah.
Which is basically Nero Wolfe set in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
But William Conrad. The show itself is fine. The first episode I saw of it on ETV actually had Jack Cassidy in it.
Okay.
Who I had just recently found out was David and Sean Cassidy's father, and Katie Cassidy's grandfather. And just what a weird life that those all people have.
It is a strange, is a strange group there. Yeah.
But so that's fine. But I watched those opening credits of Cannon, and I'm like, this person hated William Conrad. None of this is flattering.
Did you guys get off to like a bad start?
Yeah. Well, though I do love the fact that then the announcer comes on and gives you guest starring.
Yeah.
And lists every guest star on the episode.
Yeah.
Jack Cassidy.
For the next minutes, I will be giving you names of people on the show.
That's right. And it's a big episode.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up with a lot of different sort of old TV, but weirdly enough, the detective stuff never sort of fell down to me. So I'm getting it in a non-nostalgic way. I'm looking at it from someone who's seeing it as an adult in the future, quite a ways off. So I don't know, maybe it was kick-ass when it came off, when it started, but it hits me a little weird now. Whereas like Mannix hits me as really fresh.
Mannix was just a little before my time to watch him live. They ran 68 to or 67 to 75. And I would have been 5 years old in the final season.
Okay.
And I remember watching like Emergency and Adam 12 in ages 4 and 5. But these were the type of shows my parents watched. So I got to see a lot of Rockford and Cannon when it was on. And Macmillan and Wife and Heart to Heart. And, that's their kind of shows. So I would see those. But it would have been interesting to see Mannix when I was that young.
Yeah.
You know?
I think you. There's a really good book out that's called Now Back to Mannix, and it talks about a woman who sort of grew up with the show. And she's the one who wrote the book and sort of goes through a lot of the sort of philosophical things that are brought up, and she does a whole section on like the hero's journey and how Mannix is like a really classic hero's journey, sort of a setup. That's another thing that's been interesting to me to go back to the second season is so I finished the whole series, and then I sort of started back, and when you've been watching that nonstop that many episodes, you sort of it blends all together.
Yeah.
So you sort of lose the freshness of, say, the first season versus second season. It's all just, oh, it's Mannix, it's that character I know. And going back to the second season, he actually is a lot sharper, like a lot more curt with some people. And he's not like unfeeling. He's not like, a robot or anything, but he's a little bit more snappish in a way that sort of mellows as the show goes on. And I sort of appreciate that. I like it's subtle character growth, but it is character growth.
Yeah.
And for a show that sort of resets to one every, episode, it is interesting to see that sort of character growth.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah.
There were some really interesting episodes in the second season that felt like a departure. Just there was the whole episode with the British neighbor that ended up down in Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the episode with his old war. There's always an old war buddy. But his old war buddy.
That platoon was bonkers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But his old war buddy who works as a ranger station up in the hills and needs help. Or suddenly there's a race car episode.
Yeah.
And
that's the first of the race car episodes.
Okay, good. I know there's more coming.
Several more. And in fact, they sent Mike Connors to driving school for like a week. And they're like, could you just learn how to drive a race car and come back and do race car episodes for us? So he was like, okay. And then
did they watch the beginning of Ben Gazzara's Run for Your Life and went, race cars, those are popular. Let's go with that.
Let's do a race car episode. Yeah. At that writer's room, they're just like, Jim, you're doing the race car episode? I'm going to do this, Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to do the Mexico episode because we need to have a Mexico episode. And you're going to do the old war buddy episode.
Lalo, I'm going to need you to write sort of a Tijuana brass riff, and we're going to play that in every scene that has anything to do with anything vaguely Latin. So it's like, oh, we're in Mexico, play the song. Oh, we're in a cool bar that has pate, play the song.
One of the things, and I think it's in the episode with the guy at the ranger station, is there is a location that I've seen probably 4 or 5 times in just 2 seasons. Yeah. That whenever they leave Southern California,
that's where they go.
Stops at a gas station / general store.
Yep. If I remember correctly, I'm not certain, but I think that's the one that Rusty found and it's still there. Because we're gonna have to do like a road trip to the Mannix gas station.
Well, yeah, because we need a photo of you at that gas station for the book. Just we got to get you on the set for the.
Interestingly enough, another thing I'm trying to track down. So apparently, 17 Paseo Verde is on a set in the Paramount lot, but it's based on a real building in, I want to say, Santa Barbara, and I believe the building's still there. So I think we should go get pictures in front of that.
Absolutely. My photographer heart, I'm ready. Let's go.
There you go. We're going to get it. And I don't want to say too much yet, but I have a really cool thing to work on the book. I have a very cool interview coming up this weekend. I'm very excited.
Is it one we've talked about?
Yeah, I've talked to you backstage, and it's good, and we've sort of started the preliminary stuff, and I'm excited. And who knows, the book may be veering in a different direction, but it's still gonna be awesome. So we'll see.
As a writer, you find that whether it's characters or story, they tend to go the direction they want to go.
True.
And if you fight it, no,
not worth fighting.
If it starts going a direction, let it go and see where it goes. Because most of the time, stories and stuff like that have their own natural direction.
They do, and it's fun for me because I haven't been writing seriously in a long time, and it's nice to actually have something interesting. I love research, complete research lunatic. So that's fun. Some fun stuff.
Yeah. And everything I've seen about Mike Connors, and this just makes it a very great subject to play with.
Yeah.
It's such a unique show, but also the cast was so, I mean, Mike Connors himself was just so unique and so basically good-hearted is how it comes across.
Yeah. I've put on my researcher hat, and I've tried to find the dark, awful things in the background, and none of them have popped up yet. So it looks like that's actually what it looked like is what it was.
Yeah. About the worst thing you can say about him is he really liked to shoe polish his hair.
He loved to shoe polish his hair. My favorite thing is, so I have about, I don't know, 60, 70 old magazines here with interviews and things. My room's a complete mess. And one thing that gets brought up all the time that makes me laugh is people always be like, we're having an interview with Mike Connors, and we're at this restaurant, and he's eating some lettuce and some cottage cheese. And it's like every single one of these interviews. And at one point he's like, yeah, I don't get to eat anything good, and I have to exercise all the time. It's like it's this poor dude in his 40s who's doing a really, that's a 6 day shooting, 6 days a week shooting. It's a blistering schedule, and it's incredibly physical. He's doing a lot of his own stunts, and I'm in my 40s now, and it's hard to like stay in shape. It's difficult. And I can only imagine if you also then wanted me to like, jump in the water and do a bunch of scenes with that, run up a hill and let someone punch me or throw me over a car. That's going to be a lot. But if you'll notice, and obviously we always read things to things that we want to see, but Mannix likes to steal people's food. And so if you watch and he comes in and someone's eating something, Mannix will usually just fucking stick his fingers in there and like have some.
I haven't picked up on yet, and that's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
I had an uncle that used to do that constantly, and it drove me nuts. So
yeah, me too. It makes me crazy when people take food. He'll eat your fries, or he'll like just walk up behind and like start chewing on them. So I think that Mike Connor's just really hungry. Because like he was trying to stay in shape and was like, oh God, something that's not cottage cheese and lettuce.
I'm curious if you know this. What did he do after Mannix? I mean, probably a couple episodes of Love Boat, because that's everybody did that.
He did some Love Boat. He did some other smaller movies. There's like a movie called Avalanche Express that was. He did a bunch of television movie work. I can, off the top of my head, I can think of a movie called Revenge for a Rape, which is kind of bonkers. That's an interesting. It's not good, but it is an interesting sort of take on that whole deliverance thing. He had a short-lived series called Today's FBI that I believe it only lasted for like a season. And that one, it was a producer that he had worked with before. And apparently he said, there's an interview of him saying he was a great guy, and I liked him as a friend, but we didn't see eye to eye on the show. And it, like I said, it only made it a season.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, again, another interview with him talking about the producers and writers and such on Mannix, and he was like, it doesn't usually happen that way, but like we were all in agreement on everything all the time. Basically, he was like, it was a great set. We liked each other, and we all sort of wanted to do the same thing. And apparently at one point, Bruce Geller had pissed off Paramount enough that he like wasn't allowed on set. So apparently there was a lot of, Connors said, like, I spent a lot of evenings talking to him on the phone about what went down that day, which is kind of bonkers.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Bruce Geller died at very young in a plane crash. He was. I feel like that's why there's so many helicopters on the show. Like they had such a huge aviation budget, and it was because he was a pilot, and that was sort of his thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, episode 1, Mannix is chased by a helicopter.
Yeah, Mannix is like attacked by a helicopter. A girl's attacked by a helicopter. Everyone's attacked by a helicopter.
Yeah.
There's a lot of helicopter attacks. When you get later in the season, I think this will crack you up. It makes it into the credits. He always looks really elegant. He always runs he carries himself well. He's a big guy, but he moves very beautifully, except for this one scene where he runs next to a plane, the little plane trying to take off, and he just looks like he's going to fall over and shit himself. Like that's just, there's no good way to say it. It's not elegant. It's very obnoxious. And every time I look at it, I go, yeah, Mike Connors is running next to a plane. Like that, I'm impressed that he is doing anything in that scene because it looks terrifying to me.
There is one scene in the opening credits, and it's been there since season 1.
Yeah.
And every other scene in the credit, I go, oh, that was in this episode. That was that episode. There's a woman in white
in the tennis
spins out and her skirt swirls. It's like, I don't remember seeing that in any episode.
No, we've looked for it, and I believe that was just background footage that they used. I believe also one of the women that he kisses in the first and second season isn't actually from an episode. I think those are just shot with like background. A lot of it's correct. I know one of the scenes in the credits, he dislocated his shoulder. And it's which is so the one where he sort of like rolls out of the car and hits the sand pit and comes up with a gun. I think that's when he dislocated his shoulder. There's a lot of like gnarly injuries that took place too. And again, some of these you have to look at with a grain of salt, because you have to say how honest is that 70s tabloid.
Yeah.
But apparently at one point a Jeep ran over him. But also hilarious to me.
Yeah. They all seem to like boats in the series.
Boats, yeah. It's they we always say, ooh, is Mannix gonna go in the drink this time? Like if it's a boat, we'll sort of be like, okay, what do we think? Is he going in? And in fact, in one of the last episodes I watched from the second season, our answer was he's not going in water, but it's because I can tell they've already lost the light on this shoot. And it's like, oh, they definitely don't have another hour to film at that location. It's going to be black, and they're not bringing in, brand new lighting for it. So I don't think Mannix is going in the drink this time. Yeah.
The other thing I've noticed is that anytime we pull back on the camera and Mannix is focused on something, there's a better than average chance he's about to get hit in the back of the head.
Yeah. Was that in the second season where I can't remember what season it was, but he gets knocked out. And then the police find him and they're like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I knocked myself out while I broke in. Just like all snarky at them. And it's like,
don't remember that. So
it's in one of the seasons where, of course he gets hit in the back of the head. like I said, it is his fatal flaw. His fatal flaw is not turning around enough.
Yes.
That's just sweep behind you occasionally.
If he was a quarterback, they would call it tunnel vision.
If he was, yeah, but he's not. He's just going to get smacked in the head.
But it turns out, as a detective and a quarterback, you need to have your head on a swivel.
You need to have your head in a swivel, man.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to spend all this time on the ground.
Yeah.
But
I know I texted you when I found the stat that he's been knocked unconscious 55 times in the series. And I told you that just seems like not enough.
no,
That seems like season 1 and 2 combined.
it really does, because I was like, what, there's 200 plus episodes? I was like, he at least gets hit in the head once an episode. And I know there's episodes where it's more than once.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's a few episodes it doesn't happen, but they're few and far between.
Far between, yeah. There's he definitely needs like an MRI, and definitely needs to be on some ibuprofen, and
Oh yeah, he's definitely got CTE.
he really does. Yeah. It's actually, I sort of expected it to come up like as the series went along, just be like, I need to not get hit in the head anymore. There's a great episode with Peggy where she literally just screams after him, "Don't get hit in the head." And it's like, at that point, it's very funny, and she plays it sort of funny.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, you're like, you should listen to her.
I know he showed up on an episode of Diagnosis Murder as Mannix.
As Mannix.
I think it would have been hilarious if the episode was actually him waking up from a coma. When we realized that episodes 2 through 8 were all just his coma dream, and he still worked for Intertech.
Oh God. That would actually be great. Just be like, back to your desk.
Yeah. Lou's been sitting by his Lou spends every evening sitting by his bedside waiting for him to wake up.
And now suddenly that those pictures I put up of Lou in the shower make more sense. The scene with when Joseph Campanella comes back in, it is bonkers, because they're at a gym and he's just like, I'm going to take my clothes off and get in the shower and have this conversation with you. And it's so random. And like, to this day, I'm never going to be over it. I'll be like,
You posted a picture of that, and it looked like it was Mannix looking down to see what Wickersham had, or what,
I represented it fairly, is all I'm going to say.
It wasn't your caption. It was the look on the picture.
Jesus, yeah. It's a weird show. It has some sort of bonkers, racy moments to it. And one of the things I like is, like, there's no, I can't think of a single scene where a female character is played like with disrespect. Like, they're very respectful of their characters.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of what they're doing. And I like that. I like that there's episodes where Joe will be, having a conversation with a sex worker, and just having a conversation like it's a normal conversation. And it doesn't come up aside from the fact that you just saw her walk out of a shoot that's like a porno shoot.
Yeah.
That's literally the only reason that you would know that. And in that scene specifically that I'm thinking of, they have a big old conversation, and it's very obvious that, like, they're old buddies. And I like that. I like that there's all these, his character isn't out to try to change everyone.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like, I'm going to do my thing and help people where I can. And that's very refreshing.
Yeah. Every once in a while, he seems to get a little pig-headed.
Yeah, he can be a normal.
Yeah. I think the episode with where Peggy gets the second boyfriend guy, or the guy she likes who's part of the robbery, she's trying to go, look, I have this idea, and he's, no, you're the secretary. You're supposed to be making and it's like, that doesn't fit anything else in the series.
No.
He doesn't come across that way any other time. So
I will say, though, in that episode, you're right. He speaks sharply to her, and I think the exact words he uses is something along the lines of, "You're the secretary. You're supposed to be making coffee and taking notes."
Yeah.
It's a thing like that. And then she is right. She completely solved the case in the first 5 minutes of the case.
Yeah.
And so it's him literally having to be like, oh, you know what? Maybe I should shut my mouth and listen to other people occasionally. And in that, it's the next day he comes in and she says something very pointed, like he says, like, "Oh, what are you up to?" And she says, "I'm just here making coffee and taking notes." Like, like, maybe don't talk to me like that. And so he listens to her, and she is correct. So I like that she's correct. I like that it's not always Mannix that fixes it. And in fact, she gets to do more and more stuff. She gets to have some interesting adventures, we'll say. That was another moment that really stuck out to me in this season. Was there's a scene where it's the one that you were talking about earlier, where he sees a woman being choked on the balcony while he's in a helicopter, and then tries to figure out what's there. And Peggy goes undercover as a maid.
Yeah.
And she breaks in and takes photos of all his paperwork and sort of does it. But the part that was really interesting to me was you got to see Peggy play sort of a stereotypical maid she really turns on kind of a Gone with the Wind accent and plays up kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to watch that because you never see it until she needs to turn it on. And I like that because it's like that was a realistic thing at the time, is you are going to run into people that are literally just going to treat you like you're different and other and not as good as them. So if you're trying to keep attention off you, maybe you'll play with that and use it to your advantage. And she does. And that was an interesting thing to see. Also in the episode, and that sort of comes up again in the episode where we were talking about where her love interest is the inside man on that. She says something along the lines to him as, "Oh, he must have done it because he's black." And Mannix gets really pissed at her. He actually kind of grabs her by the arm and is like, "Dude, I thought you knew me better than that."
Yeah.
Which is a nice sort of way to play that, because it's not him saying like, "Ooh, I'm hurt," and how dare you speak to me that way. It's his character saying like, "I thought you knew I wasn't that way."
Yeah.
I'm literally saying that he's the inside man because I've done all this work and that's what makes sense.
And he was right.
And he was right. And also, I like the fact that if your hero is kind of disgusted with that take, then, you as the audience would have to go, "Oh, yeah, no, he gets that that's not right. Oh, that's not right."
Yeah.
And it's like the impact character here, this good character that you're experiencing the story through, has this very distinct moral point that he believes in, and
And I find that fascinating, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's not something we can usually do nowadays as a writer. If there's one black guy in the story and you make him the bad guy, there's a good chance you're going to get people calling you out for it.
Sure.
So the fact that they actually address that in the story is rather fascinating.
It is very fascinating because you're right. Sometimes that's the bad guy, and he's like, "I'm sorry," and I don't think he did it because he's an evil person. He just, that's what he got his chance for.
It's interesting seeing the politics and social issues that come up. I noticed in one episode, and it was the episode with that Slim Pickens showed up in.
Yeah, gotta love Slim.
That he goes to another state to investigate something and involves a politician. and he ends up getting his license to practice in that state revoked.
Yeah.
But through the entire, and the politician's running for governor of the state, and through the entire episode, they never say
The state.
what state it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's Arizona, wink, don't say,
Yeah.
is kind of the whole episode. Yeah.
I thought either Arizona or Nevada.
Yeah, it's one of those two. Let's see. They go to Vegas that series in season 2. They make it to Vegas. And then in that one they're very obviously in Vegas. They say the Vegas thing. I know that they mention San Francisco, and eventually there's several episodes in San Francisco. Shot in San Francisco, which are very cool. Especially I grew up in Northern California, so I spent enough time in San Francisco that like I see a scene and go, "Ooh, it's it's Ghirardelli Square." It's that fun thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is fun to see things move a little bit outside of LA on occasion.
Well, I wonder if they just never mentioned the state because they never wanted to insinuate that any governor of any state might be crooked.
I don't know. I'll have to dig deep in that and see if I can find any info, because you're right, it is a bit odd that they're like, no one say what it is.
Yeah, but they bring up the fact that it's a different state a lot.
They're like, out of state.
Yeah, we're pulling your license to practice in this state. What state?
Yeah.
And why does he have a license to practice in a state other than California?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, that's weird. Why are you doing that, buddy?
Yeah.
Is that I'm trying to remember if that's the same episode with the woman who is a lawyer, whose dad was a lawyer. Is that episode, or is that that's the political one? It's different. Okay, that was another out of state or out of.
Yeah, that's the one where he's getting on the plane to go and somebody knocks him out.
Yeah.
He was leaving. It would have solved your problem.
Yeah, it really would have. That's actually there's two things I know I wanted to talk about that I'll bring up, and they're sort of out of left field. But one of them is when Peggy wants him to look something up, and she tells him like it's a bad idea and like it's not going to work out, and he says, "Oh, but I'm gonna do it anyways." And then he says, "Hey, Peggy, can you look into flights going to that area?" And she says, "There's only one flight, and it gets in it this time, and you'll get in it this time." So it's a great little moment where you see her go, "Oh, you shouldn't do it, but I have already booked that flight for you."
Yeah, you shouldn't do it, but I know you're going to. So
and here it is. And I like that too. So I mean, I've done service jobs, and there's a lot of things that Peggy does that make it very obvious that her boss values her opinion and appreciates that she's actually good at that stuff.
Yeah.
That does my heart well. We're not quite to the episode where he literally tells the assistant, your boss treats you mean and you should leave. But yeah, that was a nice episode for me. That felt good. And there was one more I wanted to bring up about this season. I don't remember what it was that I was like, oh, that was a great sort of thing they did. It'll come back to me.
The one with the out of town with the lawyer daughter episode was very strange to me.
Yes.
Because she seemed like a deer in the headlights through most of it.
She did.
And then suddenly she's like, oh, okay, no, I got it now.
No, yeah. I'll say that as a woman, there's plenty of stuff that I know I can do that I'm still deer in headlights about because people constantly want to make it that you can't. And another thing I like about that episode is that this is another good example of the fact that, I mean, Mannix has plenty of relationships with ladies over the course of the series. There's plenty, but it's never like you'll never see him take advantage of someone.
Right.
And I liked in the episode, Actually, I kept waiting for that to happen too. As I was watching and I was like, let's find that episode where he's a super gross creeper and completely puts me off, and I have to be like, oh, Joe, why did you do that? And it doesn't happen. But in that one specifically, he gives her like a little kiss on the cheek.
Mhm.
And it's this completely platonic, very sweet sort of I'm proud of you kiss on the cheek, which was nice to see. It wasn't like, you were so good at lawyering, come here, let's make out. Or, ooh, it gets me super turned on when you do good lawyering.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm proud of you. Here's an affectionate, proud kiss for you, which was very sweet.
But also, it seemed like her hair changed when she suddenly became competent. She
Well,
had this big, huge, bouffant-looking thing going on, and then suddenly she became, competent, and it was like, oh, a normal haircut.
yeah. Well, that's like for all ladies. If you'll see, my hair is quite different from the last time you saw me, so I'm competent now.
I see. Okay.
So don't question me about anything. I'm correct. No.
Yeah, my hair is a total train wreck and hasn't been cut since the pandemic started. So,
More blue. It needs more blue into it.
yeah, I did go blue for a while, but went back to brown.
Yeah. Try purple next.
I do find it fascinating that every once in a while they try to throw sex at Mannix.
Every once in a while, they'll throw some sex at Mannix.
In the political one, there was the newspaper lady who kept coming on to him.
Yeah.
There was another episode, I don't remember which one it was, but this guy showed up from the bank and said, we're going to hire you to go overseas. And we're going to give you this blonde to go with you. She's an accountant.
This hot accountant wants to ride you in the plane. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
That is actually very funny. And it's funny, too, because his response is always like, cool, a hot lady. I can get my own hot ladies, thanks.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't have any problem.
No, he doesn't have problems. And he's definitely not going to take you up on that.
Right.
There's also some coming up where a woman will come on to him and he'll sort of like make out with her for a minute and then realize what's going on and be like, oh, no, you don't have to make out with me. It's cool. I'll just help you. And there's a couple of episodes like that where I think, oh, that's nice. Like, you're so, you're not gross. Look at you being not disgusting, Mannix.
I do find it interesting every once in a while. They did it once in season 1 and also in season 2, where, I mean, they love bringing old war buddies, but every once in a while they'll bring an old girlfriend.
Yeah, lots of old girlfriends.
There was one in season 1, I remember.
Yep.
But in season 2, there was the girl that thought she hit somebody with the car.
Yep. Isn't that Hot Lips?
Yes, it's Loretta Swit. Yes.
Yeah. Old girlfriend.
Yeah. And I that's another thing I find interesting is that every once in a while they're like, he had a story before Mannix, before all this happened. Yeah. So he's a rebel freedom fighter and in the Korean War, and he's had these girlfriends, and it's like,
yeah. And if you'll notice too, there's no all of his ex-girlfriends are like real pleasant about it. There's so many where he's like, it's my ex-girlfriend, we're doing a hug now, yay. And like, I like that he's not a bad ex.
Wait a minute. Isn't that normal? Because I still talk to all my exes.
It's not them going, oh God, it's his number, Jesus, don't answer the phone, oh my God, it's that guy. I'm not saying I don't have what I would call bad exes, but I do have people left in my phone, so if they ever call me, I know not to answer the phone. Like, I was like, I know who you are, and like, I'm not going to take you out because I'm not going to remember your number, but I'll remember your name, and if you ring me, I'm not answering. But he does have an interesting past. I like the fact that the character started out in Intertech with a bad fit for him. It was a bad fit.
Yeah.
And so I like the change over into into him being in his office by himself and with Peggy. One of the things I think that's fun though is I think he finally appreciates Lou a little bit, because there's episodes where it's like, oh shit, I gotta make rent. And like I just helped people.
Yeah.
There's episodes where Peggy's like, hey, do you want to bill anyone for your services that you have done? Because we're I'm your employee.
You need to pay me.
Yeah.
I can buy food for my son. Yeah.
He said to her at one point something along the lines of, don't I usually pay you on time?
Usually.
Yeah.
Mannix also breaks one of my detective rules.
Ooh.
There are basic iconic detectives that most detectives are based off of.
Sure.
You have the Sherlock Holmes setup where you have the great detective, and then you have the sidekick who is the person everybody can relate to. Because it's the Holmes and Watson, and we've seen that dozens of times on TV. You've got your Nero Wolf, which is the super brain who can never leave the house, and the leg man. And in a way, that was Mannix season 1. The computers were Nero Wolf, or Lou and the computers.
Yeah.
And then there's the Sam Spade type, which is the, hates authority, punches first, usually gets knocked around.
Yeah. Very jaded.
Very jaded. And then there's the Miss Marple type, the quiet, unassuming one. And Mannix doesn't fit any of those.
No.
And I think that's because of the way they redid it.
Yeah.
Because originally it was the Nero Wolf formula.
Yeah.
And they went, okay, well, we didn't really establish him enough to be a bastard to be the Sam Spade type.
Yeah.
He's not a super genius, so he can't be the Sherlock type.
No.
And so Peggy's not Watson.
No.
And he's not unassuming.
No.
So he doesn't really fit any of the 4 classic motifs.
He really doesn't. He's really sort of an everyman that is just really good at busting hump to get the job done. And he's also very compassionate and very driven by people.
He's got a big heart. He doesn't look down at anybody. No. He gives everybody an equal chance, whether cop, criminal. I mean, because you see it a lot of times, like Cannon always plays that he's smarter than every cop he's dealing with.
Yeah, of course.
And he's an ex-cop, which is hilarious. So that's and you see that in other ones too. Or Barnaby Jones is definitely the unassuming type.
Yep.
The Miss Marple type. And you see that in all these shows. But yeah, Mannix has got the big heart. He doesn't have the chip on his shoulder. He doesn't fit any of.
He doesn't. He's like I said, very, very everyman. He's pretty good at handling himself physically.
And
run around a lot. Pretty good. He's not a superhero though. He's not. You don't see stuff where you go, oh my god, I can't believe Mannix did that. You look at it and you go, oh, I'm really upset for Mike Connor's knees. You should not jump away. Why are you crawling up a tree?
Yeah, it's like he's got a little bit of all of them in a way, because I mean, you look at the Sam Spade type and they're more of a force of nature. They come in and they just destroy it. They usually don't figure anything out. They just keep causing problems until the answer comes to the surface.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not really Mannix either.
No.
So
it's definitely hard to pin down.
Yeah, but you can't really move him up to a 5th icon or a 5th motif because there really hasn't been anybody using that formula. He's unique unto himself.
Yeah, he really is. And something I read talking about the character that I think makes the most sense is they said you didn't actually tune in to see what was going on. You tuned in to see how Joe was doing.
and when he's going to get knocked out.
To see how Peggy was doing and when she was going to be smarter than her boss. It's definitely it's not a character that is put into a box so you understand it more. He's his own self.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was kind of some of the 70s shows were that way. I think Rockford kind of fell in that category too. Not all of them, but there's a couple that.
Rockford's an ex-con though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Rockford, that's his gimmick is I used to be bad, but now I'm on the good side.
Yeah.
You know,
and he's a bit Sam Spade if you were going to put him in a category.
Yeah.
You know, because he wasn't brilliant. He was dogged, determined, and Mannix has that dogged determination that he's not going to give up, like the choked woman.
Yeah.
Where he's going to stick to it and stick to it and stick to it till he gets the answer, or
fail himself.
Yeah, the dead girl and the guy on the boat who's always drinking champagne.
Yeah.
And he goes, but he was drinking coffee when I saw him. Obviously, he wanted a clear head, so he was lying.
Yep.
Like, okay, that's a little Sherlock there.
It is, and you know what? Not like, look, I don't always have a cocktail in my hand, Mannix. Most of the time, but not always.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But
I also noticed that there's some interesting directorial episodes. The one with the I think it was the one with the lady lawyer. There was a lot of like extreme close-ups.
Yeah.
Weird angles. And every once in a while I have to stop and go, who is directing this?
Yeah. Okay. It's true that I feel like they weren't nailed down to one particular style. Like it didn't have to fit the quote unquote Mannix look because it does change.
Yeah.
And there was also an episode this season where all of a sudden it was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was super noir sounding and they had him narrating his own thoughts.
Yeah, that's the other thing that popped up was a couple times in the season he thinks out loud and he's standing on outside a bar looking over the ocean and he starts the thoughts in his head and it's like, this is new.
Yeah, you're like, are we gonna do this now? And then you're like, oh no, we're just gonna do it for that episode.
Yeah.
It's fact, when we were watching that episode, I was with my husband and we were both like, was there supposed to be a second character and then they got ill and like didn't make it to the shoot? Because there's all this like dialogue exposition suddenly in Mannix's head.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, there are ways around. I had a comic story I was working on called Savage. And in it, there's this old guy I was working on. I was basically taking somebody else's story and doing the script for it.
Okay.
And he wanted all of this exposition, this guy to talk, but there was nobody around. So he just wanted this guy talking out loud. And in the scene beforehand, he cuts the head off of a siren. So I have him put the head of the siren in a bag and I just leave it on the car seat and he spends all the time talking to the head. So all the dialogue he's having with that. So they could have just like put a dog in the scene or a cat or something and have Mannix petting the cat and talking that way. There is a way around it, but nope. They just went for full on narration all of a sudden.
Narration. Yeah. It was an odd one. I don't want to call it an odd choice because it worked fine. I mean, it was fine.
Yeah.
It's not what I would have done, but you know.
Did Peggy get to do a voiceover at one point too?
Yeah, there's
I vaguely remember that.
Some random little moments where I always look at that and I always think like, did you guys not get like, did the film not come out? Did you have to redo this with, you know? I know it was a real fast shooting, a very aggressive shooting schedule, and they did like 6 days a week, and also it's a single camera show. So like all of the one way. Oh, sorry, I knocked you. Sorry, all of the one way shots are filmed, and then they have to move the camera around and get all the reaction shots. So everything takes twice as long.
Yeah.
So say.
Yeah. All right. We're going to be wrapping up soon, but I have one other episode I wanted to bring up.
Okay, do it.
And that was the immigration episode with the guy being killed, it looking like it's a Hispanic.
Yeah.
And that's pretty edgy for 1968, 67, 68.
Very edgy.
That
Yeah.
someone is doing fake documentation, basically like the early days of a coyote.
Yeah.
You know? And just they bring in the whole Hispanic culture, and
Mannix attacks them with some bullhorns as well. That's my favorite. He gets cornered by like 4 guys, so he pulls bullhorns off the wall.
Yeah.
And is like, I'm gonna mess you up with these bullhorns. And it's great because then like sort of the leader of the gang is like, you're not doing so great.
Yeah.
Which is sort of fantastic. That guy
Yeah.
being, I feel like those bullhorns aren't gonna fix this for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That was an interesting episode. Then for some reason we end up in an abandoned baseball stadium, and there's a whole lot of running.
There's a whole lot of running. Yeah, I feel, doesn't he jump over a barrel at some point? That might be a different episode.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track.
It's hard to keep track. No, but another thing I liked in that episode, if I remember correctly, there's a scene where he talks to a Hispanic woman, a young woman who's pretty in her house to ask her questions, and he leaves the door open and doesn't block like her way out.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was like beautifully blocked. The scene was beautifully blocked because it was like, I'm looking at it and going, ooh, it's going to make me really uncomfortable if you're between me and the door. Like if you've just come to ask me stuff, I don't know what your intentions are, and it's making me anxious. And he literally just gets rid of all that by like, I'm going to go over here and leave this door open. So
subtle body language. If a director's good or an actor and they do this stuff like that, it plays well. I'm thinking of in the recent Falcon and Winter Soldier series, there's a scene where Falcon, Sam, is talking to this young girl who's the bad guy of the series.
Mm-hmm.
And they sit down against a table, and Sam literally puts his back to her, showing that he's come in peace.
Yeah.
And it's that subtle, and that's similar in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. That body great on that show. And it's a thing I think gets neglected a lot by writers, but it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Like, when you do good body language, you know?
Yep.
And let's I know we're getting ready to wrap up, but let me finish a body language thing that I think is amazing.
Please.
Early with Peggy is a great scene where she comes and meets him at the airport, and he takes her by the arm and walks out with her. And that was what, 67? Like, he's walking out escorting this African American woman exactly the way he would with a white woman.
Mm-hmm.
Identical. And that to me is more than the interracial kiss on Star Trek. You're literally a human being that I will treat as a human being politely.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in a place like an airport where it's not just, he can't be in control of all the people that are in that scene. So you have the possibility that you have someone from the Deep South that's going to be offended by that. And he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He knows what's right, and he knows what he's going to do with himself. And again, that's one of those beautiful body language things. Like, look at what these characters mean. And it comes in later on in the series, where, like, spoiler alert, Peggy gets shot at one point. And when she comes to, it's all right. She's all right. Peggy lives. But when she comes to, she asks the nurse, you see her looking around, and you see her not seeing Joe and her maybe being a little upset. And she asked the nurse, "Where's Toby, her son?"
Mhm.
And the nurse goes, "I don't know who that is. What's that?" And then you hear from the corner of the room, you hear him go, "That's her son, Toby." And he stands up and goes, "He's fine. I made sure that he went with Mrs. So and so, who is his babysitter." And so at that point, you've put in enough background that this character knows who is the babysitter for his secretary's son and made the effort to make sure that her son was okay and taken care of, because he knew that was what she was going to be worrying about when she woke up.
Yeah.
It's beautiful writing.
I think the neat thing about the show is that where race becomes an issue,
Mm-hmm.
it's played from a very understanding point of view,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not made an issue all the time. And
Sure.
Peggy is treated just as another character. She's not the black secretary.
Exactly.
She's the secretary.
Yeah.
And and I think that's why it works so well.
And it as the show progresses, there's moments where she's not even treated as the secretary anymore. She's just treated as like his closest friend.
Yeah.
You know, that's
much
great.
closer than Albie would ever be.
Oh yeah.
All right, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Since these are being rebroadcast on the Experience, I need to try to keep them as close to an hour and a half as I can.
We're good.
So I want to thank you for another fun talk. And
fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll start going through season 3 so we can do this again.
Let's do season 3. All right, awesome. It was good to see you. Bye, everybody. I'm not going to knock you over again. And yeah, I can't wait to see you for season 3.
All right.
All right.
And please join me during the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at Tuesday and Wednesday at 2:00 on the Experience 2 Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern for the Dan Wickline Show. It's on 6:00 Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. Also in stores this week on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And then back here for Pop Go the Writers next week, where Paul Story will be back. And we'll probably be taking a look at MODOK.
Ooh,
so
fun.
join us then.
All right.
Thank you, Irene, and we will see you all soon. Have a great night.
See you later. Bye.